In this video, we'll be comparing fractions using benchmark fractions. Let's say we want to compare 25/46 to 3/8. We could use common numerator, we could use common denominator, but in this case, I notice that both of these fractions are close to a half. And if it turns out that one is less than a half and the other is greater than a half, I can use that fact to compare the two fractions. So I'm going to choose my benchmark of a half. Benchmark fractions can be any fractions, it's just whatever's convenient to your problem. Half is really common because it's easy to work with. So first I'm going to start with my fraction on the left here, 25/46. Well, I'm going to write 1/2 as an equivalent fraction with 46 in the denominator. So I can see that equivalent to 1/2 would be 23/46. Now I'm going to compare 25/46 to 23/46. This is using a common denominator. We have the same whole, the same size parts. We have more parts. 25 is greater than 23, so I'm going to write it over here to the right of 23/46. 25/46 is greater than 23/46. Now I'm going to come to my second fraction, 3/8. Well, I'm going to take my benchmark and write an equivalent fraction that has 8 as a denominator. So I know that 1/2 is equivalent to 4/8. Now I can compare 4/8 to 3/8. And I can see that 3/8 will be less than 4/8. Again, I used a common denominator here with 8, so we have the same size whole partitioned into 8 equal parts. And then I can see 4 parts will be greater than 3 parts. So I have used the common denominator, but I didn't find a common denominator between the two given fractions. So now I'm going to translate this up. We have all of these fractions right here are equivalent to 1/2. So 1/2 is going to be less than 25/46. And 1/2 is going to be greater than 3/8. So I've positioned my given fractions on either side of 1/2, and so I can see that 3/8 will ultimately be less than 25/46. So this is a transitive property of inequalities, where if I have 3 numbers, I'll call them A, B, and C. If A is less than B and B is less than C, then I can say A is less than C. So my conclusion here, I leave out the benchmark and I just say 3/8 is less than 25/46. So I used that benchmark as an intermediate step where I indirectly ended up comparing because I found the position of the given fractions relative to 1/2. So let's fill in our inequality, our symbol up here. So here I know that 25 is greater than, we can see the way that this symbol is positioned. I want to position it in the same way. 25/46 is greater than 3/8. Let's look at the benchmark of 1. Often when we have a benchmark of 1, we're not looking to have a fraction less than and a fraction greater than. Now we're thinking in terms of number lines and thinking about two fractions that are both to the left of 1, and we're trying to figure out how far to the left they are. So let's look at the fraction 2/3 and let's look at the fraction 7/8. The first thing that I think about when I'm going to compare to 1 is how much further do I have to go to get to 1? I'm going to have to go another 1/3 of a unit to get to 1 versus another 1/8 of a unit to get to 1. So when I think about the number line here, and I'm not going to worry about the 0 in this case, I'm just going to think about which of these fractions is going to be further to the right, which is going to be closer to 1. Well, I'm going to think about how far away from 1 they are. If I have the same unit whole and I break it into 8 parts versus into 3 equal parts, I can see that 1/8 will be the smaller fraction because I've taken the same whole and divided it into more parts, whereas 1/3 will be the larger fraction. So when I think about the distance from 1, I'm looking here to the left of 1, and I can think about 1/3 versus 1/8. And this is not to scale, by the way. This is not to scale. I'm just doing relative sizes. So this is the smaller distance. So that tells me that 7/8 is going to be further to the right. Because there's a shorter distance to get to 1. So in this case, 7/8 will be the larger fraction because it's closer to 1. How do I know it's closer to 1? Because it needs a smaller unit fraction to get to 1. Since 7/8 is the larger fraction, we write 2/3 is less than 7/8.